Can't Wake the Baby, Sold Not For Sale podcast. Coach Colin here. We got Joe Rogan talking about something that has been plaguing ranchers for years now. Well, not too many years, around the time Biden got into office, and it has to do with illegal immigrants. Now, I thought it was just illegals just trying to get through, passing by, but apparently there's some stories that I'm going to share with you where it's actual cartel members, actual armed men, actually the getaways that we can't actually quantify and we can't count. These stories are pretty wild to hear. Joe Rogan's going to talk about it. Then I'm going to show you some stories. Then I'm going to show you Donald Trump talking about illegal immigration. Kamala Harris. Did I say it right? I don't know. Her talking about illegal immigration recently with Anderson Cooper. So let's start off with Joe Rogan, of course, and then we'll get into the rest.
Set it up in like 5 minutes, and then we're online. YouTube.
I mean, my wife, when I went to elk camp, my wife was like, "All right, I'll see you. I'll talk to you in 6 days." First day, elk camp, set the Starlink out, FaceTime. Yeah. Hey, baby, how are you?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
My buddy was deer hunting recently in South Texas, and he said on 3 different occasions in the week, their deer got bumped by illegals. He said it was crazy. He said illegal aliens just moving through the ranch. He said they have, a swarm of them every day.
I hunt South Texas every year, and the ranch we went to last year, at any given moment, you can drive and pick up 50 backpacks. That ranch looks like I hadn't been. This ranch was closer to the border than I've ever been, and there are piles of backpacks and tarps. They'll take tarps and put the tarp out, and they'll wait in the day, and then they get picked up at night typically. But when they get picked up, they chunk their backpack, and like that the ranch I was at, they have to have a full-time team of people just going around picking up backpacks and keeping trash off the ranch.
My buddy who has a ranch in South Texas found a dead guy. Found a guy ran out of water, just died on his ranch.
And it's heartbreaking because, dude, if anybody, I can't imagine having to walk through that brush to get to freedom.
Right.
Because when I get
not
back,
knowing where you're going.
Not knowing where you're going, and probably you have kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, when I leave South Texas, I'm pulling cactuses out of my ass for a month.
Yeah.
Especially if you do, you go rattle for them and stuff. So, man,
forget about rattlesnakes. Forget about everything else that's down there.
And water, yeah. When you think about, man, you get your water rations.
Yeah.
You miss that.
Yeah. You could zig when you should have zagged, and you're not going to run into water, especially down there. And it was in the summer, so 105 degrees outside. This poor dude just died, and they found him.
Well, every ranch I've went to, the ranch owner, they're encountering two deaths a year, 15 to 20. Most of the time, they come up to the main headquarters needing water, and when they get to you, or that's been my experience with talking to ranch managers down there. They're very, they're not. I don't think they're there to create any problems. They just like, hey, we need some water. And
the vast majority of them are just trying to get a better life. And we would be doing it too. Could you imagine if you're living in a third world country and you had kids, and you realize you can get to America and you get a good job, and you got to figure out how to do it? Yeah, I would do it. We would all do it. It's just the craziness of not knowing where you're going in South Texas, which is so vast. I mean, I think it's one of those things where people talk about it. It's almost like talking about space, like, oh, the galaxy is 200 million stars or 200 billion stars. It doesn't make sense because it's like it's too big for you to understand. If you had to walk through South Texas, it's South Texas.
Well,
Texas itself is bigger than like multiple countries in Europe. Yeah.
Well, I think, and even imagine before like the oil booms and oil rigs and stuff like now they have a little bit of visual lights to walk to.
Right.
I mean, man, I couldn't imagine.
Yeah.
Just striking out.
Just taking
crossing
a chance.
The Rio Grande. And
hoping, or maybe you've gone with someone who went through it before and they have a vague memory of what's the best way to get to a creek.
I don't know. I mean, we've been there, and the guys they open box blinds. The deer hunting towers, and there's a family sleeping in the box blind. And man, you just gotta feel so sorry for them. I mean, how bad? Sure. Dude, I remember when I was 15, 16 years old processing, Cubans where it's so bad that you're going to piece together a raft and you're going to give it a go for Miami.
Right.
I remember being 16 going, how bad must that be? How bad must that be?
Pretty bad.
Pretty bad.
Pretty bad. Their case is a little different because they're running from a communist dictatorship. And they were like, that's why the most Republican motherfuckers in this country are Cubans. Cubans go hard. They're like, we've seen what all this socialist horse comes down to. And it comes down to government control over every aspect of your life, and they enforce it with violence. They enforce it with guns. It's not as simple as everybody just gives up whatever they have, and now everybody has an equal amount. That's all nonsense. That's the hook. But the reality is the government controls everything, and you are and they always live in big-ass houses, and they eat great food, and everybody else
and
is
it's everywhere. It's
by.
from Africa to Cuba to
Venezuela.
The whole African.
Yeah.
That whole.
Have you ever hunted in Africa?
I haven't, but I know I will. I will. I can go on this show and say, man, I'm not one of the.
Man, I have to say, very interesting episode. This guy is like, if you are an avid Joe Rogan watcher, listener like I am, this guy's like Ryan Sickler. I don't know if you guys remember Ryan Sickler, but he had these very interesting stories. He just was a great storyteller, had this wild laugh, and he was just a very interesting episode. He's like Ryan Sickler, but he's not a comedian. So he's not as funny, but his stories are pretty interesting, and he just has this amazing outlook on life. I really like this episode, but let's get into what they were talking about. Now, I know that they're saying most of them just want to craft out a better life, but here's the thing, and I can't blanket statement it, but when you hear the stories about why these guys are taking these routes that you're hearing about, it becomes a little more clear what's going on. Okay, so let's start off. We'll build up to it, okay? Let's start off with this first clip, and then we're going to build up to the stories of the ranches and what's really going on.
Are Texas ranchers Marcus and Stephanie Canales. They say the U.S. government has abandoned them as migrants constantly pass through their land and destroy their property. Stephanie and Marcus join us now. You know, Marcus, you're 56 miles from the Laredo border. Thank you very much for joining us. What are you seeing on your property?
Well, what we're seeing on our property, we're getting the bailouts, we're getting the getaways, the unknowns. We're also getting all of the foot traffic. I mean, just last night we had about 3 groups of 10 plus that moved through anywhere from 1 in the morning to 4. We had some during the day. It's just nonstop traffic around here.
You know, Stephanie, when I hear that, here's what I think. You know, I have cameras around my house, Ring cameras. I look at them in the morning, and if I see a car between 1 and 4 a.m., I get a little alarmed. Does it scare you to look at this video footage and see people you don't know just traversing your property?
Oh, of course it does. And these are, you know, the groups just continue to get bigger. I mean, we've had groups of 30 that have come through our property. And, you know, when you're out in a pasture by yourself, you may have a gun on you, which we do. But, you know, if 30 people approach you, you're in trouble. And that's what's scary.
Wow. You know, Marcus, and I understand you've had to repair damaged property.
Yes, ma'am. It's a constant battle with repairing fences, you know, mending our fences to keep our cattle in. That's our biggest thing. You know, one of our parcels here, or pieces of property, you know, it's on one of the major highways for oil field traffic, so a lot of 18-wheelers. You know, we have to keep our cattle safe and off the highway. And so when we do get a bailout and we're called, you know, by Border Patrol or DPS, you know, it's a 1 o'clock in the morning, it's during the day, whatever you're doing, you pretty much stop what you're doing to, you know, make sure the fence is mended to where it'll keep our cattle in. The other piece of property that we have is across one of the major highways, which is IH-35. And just recently there was a calf out that almost got onto the highway. And you can only guess where it comes from, and it's usually a hole in the fence that apparently, well, I found out there was a bailout the night before. It was on a neighbor not too far from us, and that calf had wandered out. But again, you know, it's livestock, and it's right there in the middle of people doing 75, 80 miles an hour down 35.
Wow. Stephanie, as I hear you both speak, I can't help but wonder, what is your reaction when you hear the White House press secretary say a statement like illegal immigration is down 90%? We know that's not true, but how does that feel?
It's a slap in the face to those of us that live down here, because we know that's not true, because we live it every single day. This has taken a huge financial toll on not just us, but all of our neighbors, all of us along the border. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. And, we are sympathetic to some of those that are coming over here because that say they're being oppressed or they can't feed their families in whatever country they're from. But there's a lot of American citizens that also can't feed their families right now. And I feel like the federal government doesn't care. And they're not doing anything to help us.
Man, so starting to hear a little bit more. They're coming across. They're having to deal with this whole thing. These people are focused on livestock. They're seeing whole small hordes of people, small groups of people all crossing through their cameras and things like that. So it's building up. Now listen to this story. Let me just make sure we're at the right minute and time here. Listen to this story.
And if something happens to them, they usually end up there at the house. If they run out of water, we end up giving them water. We end up feeding them. Most of the times we end up having to call the Border Patrol for them. I mean, what do you do living out here? You go armed everywhere you walk. You make sure that your kids don't walk off and go play where you can't see them, just in case. You never know what's going to happen. I think it's just a safety issue mainly that's out here. We picked the wrong place to raise a family. We don't have big groups of people coming across. We don't have the 50, 60, 80 people. We have the 10. We have the 4. We have the cartel. And so the people that are coming out through here are people who are not wanting to get caught. They're the ones that can go to Phoenix and they can go to El Paso or Denver, Colorado and disappear. And then you have crimes that you don't know who committed them. And I think a lot of them are from that. They're the ones that are hauling the drugs. They all come with backpacks. They all come camouflaged and they all have backpacks. So if I do meet them, I don't know if they're carrying anything. I don't have a clue. They haul things that they can hurry up and cross. Marijuana, they used to carry 60-pound packs on their back. Well, now you don't know if they are carrying anything because you can carry a little bitty brick of for $100,000 or pills of fit or they're carrying all the drugs up here so they can sell it. They're trying to make their money. We're trying to just live our life and we don't want any part of it. In 2013, my daughter was about 8 months old and my dad had gotten diagnosed with cancer, and so I came out here. And at the time my husband was working at a different job still, and so it was me and my 8-month-old child taking care of this ranch. And we got in our little side-by-side four-wheeler and we went to check water, and we went that way, and I pulled up to not at the water, but I pulled to where I could see the water and I could see people. And instead of going all the way to the water, I stopped and I got my binoculars out to see what it was. And every single one of them had a rifle on their back. And I decided that I was not going to go down there because I had my baby with me. And I turned around, and on my way back, I had 3 men jump out in the road in front of me. And luckily they didn't take their rifles down, but I did not stop. They're taking advantage of the system that's in play right now, and they are running with it. So the guys that you see in El Paso, are the ones who might have a legitimate reason to come over here from their war-torn country. The guys who are coming through my area are the ones that have already been a criminal, and they're the ones that don't want to get caught. When they come to my house and get water, I ask them if I need to call the immigration for them, and they get frantic and panic and no, don't call them. Don't call them. We'll leave. Well, I'm not going to not call the Border Patrol because that's their job.
Man. And just so you know, you just saw a picture of some men that were actually detained that were wearing the camo and the backpacks like she was talking about. I had to cover it with myself. That's why I was making my screen a little bigger here and there. But they had bricks of something that they were caught with. So, wild stuff. So this is why, it's actually worse to see a group of 5 guys or 10 guys, because those guys are dialed in. And yes, they might make a zig instead of a zag and not have water and be in those situations, but they can also be armed. They could also have drugs on them. Like it's a real problem. So it's interesting, and I say this all the time. I've said this so many times. Sorry if it's echoey in here. I'm moving, so all my stuff's gone. But I say this all the time. Enforcing strict border laws, pretty much putting back what Trump had in place, it actually is more compassionate than just having it open and be like, oh, whoever comes in, they get in. As long as you cross over, you're in. When you do that, you set those people up, because they're not all armed people that are making this trek. A lot of military-aged men. Everybody knows that. But just the fact that they know it's like that, it's going to prompt people to come. If all of a sudden, whoever gets the call from a cousin that's in the United States and they say, yeah, you know what's going to happen is they're not going to let you into the country. They're actually going to keep you in Mexico, and you're going to have to wait in some tent town for possibly a couple of years until you get your asylum hearing. And then if you pass, then you get to come in. If you don't pass, you have to go back. If they started saying that, all of a sudden, you'd see this whole tidal wave of people coming. It would turn into a trickle. That's what would really start to happen. It's more compassionate to be strict with your border. Believe you me. I'm not saying somebody should get shot on sight or anything. I'm not saying that. But just what Trump had, remain in Mexico. Perfect. Now they know you're going to have to remain. Listen, you can make your way over, but you might be in Mexico for 5 years. All of a sudden, people are like, okay, I'll find another place to go to because I don't want to be in Mexico for 5 years. Interesting stuff, man. Here, I'll play another one. This is a different rancher. Believe you me, I'm playing like through 3 different stories from ranchers. There was like 15 that I had to choose from. There's so many of these stories, but this guy actually breaks something down very interesting. Here, check this out.
Into the country, the Border Patrol guy estimates that over 20% are packing drugs.
Jim, what's this pile?
This is a pile of carpet shoes that I found on the ranch. And what their purpose is they have these fit over their shoes. They tie them, they have Velcro here, and then they have carpet on the bottom, and they don't leave tracks.
That tells you they're cartel?
Tells me that they're trying to sneak into the country.
This is...
So, I don't usually interrupt videos, but that right there, that's why I showed you this escalation of clips. You have Joe Rogan talking about it. Most of them are just hardworking people. They just stumbled into a ranch. They didn't know. Then all of a sudden you hear another clip and it's like, oh, they do know. They actually have different intentions. Then you hear another clip and they're armed. Some have drugs and it's a real problem. They're scaring people and they're coming up dead some of the time. And now you're seeing a clip of a guy saying they're wearing carpet shoes because they're trying not to leave any tracks. It went from, and this is everybody's thinking unless you do some research. It goes from just hardworking people, just hardworking random people, that's all, to literal professionals that are trying to sneak into the country for unknown reasons. Best case scenario, it's drugs. That's the best case scenario when they're trying to sneak in like that. If someone comes in and they're like, oh, cousin, and I want a job, this, that, okay, that's great. But those getaways, those people who are trying to sneak in, those people that take that chance through that ranch, through all the way through South Texas like that, that's a whole different thing. And that's the real problem. And those are the people that can't be tracked. I mean, again, I try not to interrupt clips, but just check out the pile that he found himself. This is one ranch.
And then they have carpet on the bottom, and they don't leave tracks.
That tells you they're cartel.
The ranch, and what their purpose is they have these fit over their shoes. They tie them, they have Velcro here, and then they have carpet on the bottom, and they don't leave tracks.
That tells you they're cartel?
Tells me that they're trying to sneak into the country.
This is 18 windows. It's like a lookout point, right? And even with this view, you're having a hard time keeping this place safe because it's getting worse and worse every day.
Yes, we have cartel scouts on our mountains, and they are observing everything. Their job is to know where the Border Patrol is. And we have not seen the Border Patrol on my ranch lands now for 4 or 5 months because they're busy processing people.
Sure.
The other end of my ranch is the wall, and they've cut a hole in it, and literally hundreds of people are coming through there.
Do you feel safe? I mean, you're 80, how old?
I'm 84. I'll be 85 in 3 weeks.
And your wife, Sue, do you feel safe here?
Not really.
I feel safe with Jim. I would not be too safe if I were by myself.
So that is the case with the ranchers. This is running rampant under Biden and Harris. Straight up. And honestly, you're going to hear Kamala Harris talk about the border bill and Trump killed it and it's all his fault. You're going to hear her bring that up just a little bit. But the reason that the border is so overwhelmed now, the reason that the people who are there are so overwhelmed is because they used to be able to put people back in Mexico. And now they have to let them into the country. So they are swamped. And this gentleman hasn't seen them in months because they are processing people before they used to be able to put them back into Mexico. And that would be the end of it. If you really listen close to what Harris, Biden, a lot of these leftists want in the government, they want to expedite the process to taking those people from people who are entering the country, breaking the law, into citizens. It's just, where else in the world is this going on? I don't think anywhere, man. Anyways, let's listen to Donald Trump take a question about the border. Just hear the contrast between him and Harris.
And again, I had a hard time with Congress on the wall. I took it out of the military because we rebuilt the military. We had a lot of money in the military. We took out billions because I considered it an invasion of our country. It was very easy. And we then got sued by Nancy, crazy Nancy, and all the Democrats, and we got sued 11 different times. We won all the suits. It was brutal. But we were sued a lot, and we got hundreds of miles of wall built. And then I said, let's add some more. And one of the reasons we did have the great success is because I got the wall built. I was building wall at levels that nobody had ever seen. And we were going through tremendous obstacles. It was hard, but we got it done. And then I said, let's add 200 miles, because there were certain areas. You know, it's interesting. When you add wall here, you got to add a little more wall here. And it was just it's like water. It's like water. And we were ready to do that. We ordered 200 miles. It was ready to be thrown up. It could have been thrown up in 3 to 4 weeks. And then we had a very unfortunate election. And these characters took over. And I said, you know, something's going on. They're not putting up the wall. They have to put up the wall. It would have been unbelievable, totally secure, very hard to get through the wall. That was the wall specifically that Border Patrol and all of them wanted. This is the one that they wanted. It wasn't what I wanted. I wanted to have concrete plank going up 30 or 40 feet. They said has to be steel, has to have, have to be able to see through it, et cetera, et cetera. And this is a combination of steel, concrete, and then rebar in the middle, each one of those pieces. And then they have, I told this here, they have an anti-climb panel on the top. And I hated it because I didn't like the way it looked. These things were so beautiful. And we had to put the anti-climb. But I said, no way I'm going to do that. I hate it. It was costly, but I hated it. And then we had people climbing. And it's true, the anti-climb panel is exactly what it is. It was much harder. So I said, all right, we'll do it. But this is exactly what they wanted. And they didn't want to put it up. And that's the first time that I realized that they actually want an open border. Who would want an open border? It's like, who would want an open border? Who would want men playing in women's sports? Who would want all these transgender operations on your children? So we built a tremendous amount of wall, and we were going to do another 200. But I got Mexico to come in, and they gave us thousands and thousands of troops while we were building the wall. That was hard to do. Remember, I always said Mexico will pay. They paid much more than what I was talking about. They gave us troops. They did a really good job. They didn't want to do it. They said, no way. And I said, way. And they said, no, we're not doing it. And I said, if you're not doing it, I'm going to charge you a 25% tariff. And they said, these tariffs, I'm telling you, it's my favorite word in the dictionary, outside of love and religion.
Why don't you ever hear Harris, or Biden for that matter, talking about the inside workings of what they were trying to do at the border? Do you ever notice that? People tend to, it gets to the point where some people are like, oh, you're hearing Trump talk about this over and over again. But this guy's giving you the inside of what his mind was going through, trying to make this border wall, what he was doing, you know, what they were selling it at, 5 cents on the dollar, all of this stuff. Why do you never hear? All you'll ever hear from Kamala Harris and Biden is that we had a bill. The bill was there. Donald Trump killed it. He wants to work on a problem instead of making a solution. Every single time, that's what you hear from her. You never hear the inner workings of what they did. They just say they passed some things, they did some things, and then you just have her with her face like this. Let's listen to the contrast here.
It would have allowed us to have more resources to stem that. We do not allow criminals in, and we don't allow that kind of trafficking to happen and come into our country. And as my opponent has proven himself, he would prefer to run on the problem instead of fix the problem. You may know there were some of the most conservative members of the United States Congress working with others that came up with a border security bill that would have put 1,500 more border agents at the border. Those border agents are overwhelmed. They need the support. They need the backup. It would have allowed us to have more resources to stem the flow of fentanyl. I don't need to tell this state and people around the country what is happening in terms of the scourge of fentanyl and how it is literally killing Americans. It would have put resources into stemming the flow. It would have given more resources to prosecute, to investigate and prosecute transnational criminal organizations. It would have done a lot of good. Donald Trump got wind of the bill and told them, don't put it forward. He killed the bill because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. We have to have a secure border, and we have to have a comprehensive pathway for citizenship. And that includes requiring people, hardworking people, to earn citizenship and do it in a comprehensive, humane, and orderly manner.
Let me ask you about that. I mean, you talk about the bill that Donald Trump quashed. That was in 2024. You talk about the bill he tried to get passed in 2021. That wasn't able to get passed. 2022, 2023, there were record border crossings. Your administration took hundreds of executive actions. It didn't stem the flow. Numbers kept going up. Finally, in 2024, just in June, 3 weeks before the first presidential debate with Joe Biden, you institute executive actions that had a dramatic impact, really shut down people crossing over. Why didn't your administration do that in 2022, 2023?
First of all, you're exactly right, Anderson. And as of today, we have cut the flow of immigration by over half. In fact, the numbers I saw most recently, illegal immigration.
But if it was that easy with that executive action, why not do it in 2022, 2023?
Because we were working with Congress and hoping that actually we could have a long-term fix to the problem instead of a short-term fix.
You couldn't have done one and both at the same time?
Well, here's the thing. We have to understand that ultimately this problem is going to be fixed through congressional action. Congress has the authority and the purse. I hate to use D.C. terms, but literally they write the checks. Part of the issue is in order to really fix the problem at the border. I was just at the border recently talking with border agents. You know what they talk about? Yes, they are overwhelmed. They're working around the clock. And the other thing that they talk to me about, We need more judges down there to deal with asylum claims. We need more personnel down there to deal with processing. But Anderson, and that's where Congress kicks in terms of dedicating the resources to actually fixing the problem. We have dealt with it such that, to your point, we now, as of today, as of our visit, have lower undocumented immigrants and illegal immigration than Trump when he left office.
That's true.
But we need a permanent solution, and that requires bipartisan work.
Do you wish you'd done those executive orders in 2022, 2023?
I think we did the right thing, but the best thing that can happen for the American people is that we have bipartisan work happening, and I pledge to you that I will work across the aisle to fix this long-standing problem. I think the American people are demanding it on both sides of the aisle, and it's time we actually put the partisan approach to this aside. We know what can work.
Well, let's talk about this compromise bill that you want to pass if you're elected. You said that's going to be a priority. It includes $650 million in funding for the border wall. That's something Republicans wanted. That was part of the compromise. Under Donald Trump, you criticized the wall more than 50 times. You called it stupid, useless, and a medieval vanity project. Is a border wall stupid?
Well, let's talk about Donald Trump and that border wall. So remember, Donald Trump said Mexico would pay for it? Come on, they didn't. How much of that wall did he build? I think the last number I saw is about 2%. And then when it came time for him to do a photo op, you know where he did it? In the part of the wall that President Obama built.
But you're agreeing to a bill that would earmark $650 million to continue building that wall.
I pledge that I am going to bring forward that bipartisan bill to further strengthen and secure our border. Yes, I am. And I'm going to work across the aisle to pass a comprehensive bill that deals with a broken immigration system. I think Jackson's question, part of it was to acknowledge that America has always had migration, but there needs to be a legal process for it.
There is a legal process. It's called legal immigration. Hey, it's called legal immigration. It already exists. That's how out of touch she is. You know what? I would think the same thing. She's probably seeing these numbers and she's just like, why is there no legal immigration? I gotta fix this. There should be some kind of legal process where people come in and they try to do it legally. Why is there no? There is. Those 10, 15 million people, they didn't do it. That's what's going on. Because of what President Biden and yourself did first day in office. That's what happened, actually. And it's so funny because if you really listen to what she's saying they need more judges at the border. Now, what the judges are for, I don't know if you realize this, it's for asylum. It's to take in the cases to say you qualify for asylum, you do not qualify for asylum. Now, what she's really saying when she says there needs to be more judges, she's saying we need to get these cases processed faster. And that sounds good, but fixing the problem that she keeps bringing up is just getting the illegal immigrants into the country faster. That's not a fix. That's actually detrimental to the American people, black and brown communities first, everybody when it comes to any violence and crime that goes on. So her plan is just terrible. And then when she says that they stem the flow, you know how they stem the flow, right? It's from the CBP One app. So that app allows you to access the immigration process or expedite the immigration process. You get legal status and then you get into the country. You're still someone who came illegally. You're still someone who crossed the border illegally. It's just that you went on this app either before or after, got processed, they see you, and that's it. That's how they stem the flow. Literally. They didn't actually stop it. They haven't actually stopped people because there's nothing in place to actually stop people. Again, all they need is remain in Mexico. That's all they need. And then she says they're going to stem the flow. How are they going to stem the flow if people are just allowed in like this? And then also she's like, we're going to prosecute transnational criminal organizations. For some reason, no one told her the term cartels. She says you know why? Because she doesn't want to say cartels, because then that would be a lie. And then she would also be saying that she wants to go toe-to-toe with the cartels, which she does not want to do. How are you going to stop the flow of fentanyl? How are you going to prosecute these cartel people when, like I just showed you in these clips, they're going a different route? The route that everybody else is going by the thousands that you see on the news, these guys ain't going that route. They go in little groups of 10. They ratchet up. They get backpacks on and they go. And sometimes they make it and sometimes they don't. How are you going to catch those guys? You don't even know where they are. You don't know how they do it. They're literally, like the gentleman showed us, they're wearing shoes with carpet on the bottom so you can't see their tracks. Again, it's just so wild to hear her talk about all this. Everything is a deflection to Trump. Everything is a deflection to Biden. Everything is just not her fault. But yet at the same time, she doesn't regret anything. Yet at the same time, everybody sees the system broken. And she's just like, no, we fixed it. We fixed it just 3 months ago. Anderson Cooper's like, well, it's been like this for years. And she's like, well, let me tell you about Donald Trump, okay? Okay? Because I worked at McDonald's. I come from a middle-class family, all right? So let me just tell you about this Donald Trump guy. And it's like, what's going on? This is the craziest. I've never seen a campaign. Have you ever seen a campaign like this? I've never seen it. It's amazing. But anyway, I just wanted to show you that contrast in those two people. It's very, very different the way they talk about the border. You know, Trump, did he build the full wall during his administration? Did he get everything done? No, he didn't. But at least when he talks about the border, you can hear a guy who knows about what he's talking about. He at least has an ability to paint a vision for you of what he was trying to do. He at least can tell you where the materials for the wall went, where they came from, why he was keeping people in Mexico, how he introduced the tariffs. Like, he can break down all this stuff. And yet when you get to Kamala Harris, it's nothing but deflection. It's crazy. Anyways, guys, like, subscribe, turn on the notifications. It helps us tremendously. And other than that, I'm out.